It's hard to convey what can drive you to a negative emotion for a game. Sometimes it just doesn't jive well with what you as a gamer tend to enjoy. Other times it's just objectively bad. I think in the case of Curse the Eye of Isis, it's a little bit of both. Immediately, this game strikes an atmosphere that I dig. You start out in the entrance of a semi-abandoned museum, and it is dark. Extremely dark. One might even say too dark. Thankfully, you get a lantern in the first room, but this only works to moderately solve an issue you will be having for the whole game, seeing where the hell you're going. However, I do like that lightning flashes every once in a while and lights up the room. It's a good mood. Strangely enough, this game opts for a joystick movement configuration with fixed camera angles, and it creates this sort of problem where when the camera transitions, you can keep holding the stick in the same direction and move forward, but if you deviate by a millimeter, then you'll get all turned around. This happens a lot too. I can't count the number of times I got lost because my camera whipped around on me 3 times in 1 second and I forgot if I was moving east or west. My main complaint with the navigation, however, is the fact that you can't move the map. The map itself is fine, don't get me wrong. It shows everything it needs to show aside from maybe where Abdul is. He's kind of like your item box save point. The problem lies in the fact that you can't move the map around and look ahead. You're locked to the immediate area around you, and this map is so zoomed in that you will spend a lot of time running to corners of rooms just to see what is around you and be like, oh hey, I haven't been in that door yet. Combat is surprisingly decent though. You have the ability to use melee and ranged weapons while moving, and you go into a little lock-on mode when you target enemies. What's cool is that you can target different parts of their bodies, so you can blow off a mummy's arms and head before taking it down, and while I think it looks pretty awesome, it doesn't seem to have any real tactical advantage. Picture this, I'm fighting a mummy and he's spewing this toxic breath at me, so I think, oh, I get it, I shoot off his head and it stops the spray, and then he can only swipe at me from close range. If you thought that would work, you would be incorrect, because he can still do the friggin' breath move. At this point, I just gave up on targeting other spots and I opted to just shoot them in the chest because it seemed way less time consuming and more effective. There's just something about this game that makes me feel lost all the time. You transition to different environments as this game progresses, but they all have this samey look to them, where it's hard to distinguish where you are and where you want to go. There's very few landmarks to fall back on, and the fact that this game is insanely dark doesn't help things. Your lantern is always on your hip, which is fine, but in order to see a little bit further, you need to hold your lantern up with using the R2 button. The problem with this is twofold. 1, you can't examine objects or run while you're holding the lantern, and 2, you can't hold up your lantern if you have a weapon equipped. Now, I don't know about you, but my shotgun is not leaving my hands to be able to see 2 feet further in front of me. You dig? I tried to stay engaged in this one because I love the overall atmosphere, but a lot of it just didn't grab me. The story's kinda lame, the characters aren't very likable, the music and sound effects are pretty disjointed at times. Even the puzzles and backtracking just get tedious for no real reason. My first major brow-furrowing moment was when I got to this safe in the library. Now, up until this point, you hadn't really done much outside of track down keys and items to progress, but this safe starts out by giving me half of the combination near the front of a grandfather clock. So I whip out my notepad and write down the first half. Then you get the second half by inserting an item into the clock. So I jot down the second half, thinking, alright, cool, a memorization puzzle. Probably gonna have a dial mini game, I'll get a satisfying safe opening click. Boy, was I setting myself up for disappointment. You know what you actually do? Combine the documents into one piece of paper and use it on the safe. That's it. This is very indicative of what's going to go wrong with the rest of the game, and it was in the next area of the ship that I really started to lose my motivation for this game. You spend a lot of time running back and forth, up and down multiple floors trying to progress. What's frustrating is that a lot of times you have to straight up guess where you're going. You can run around trying every door, but even the rules on the doors aren't consistent. For example, one door needed to progress says something along the lines of, "It will not open," which, up until this point, every door that required a key said something along the lines of locked from the other side or locked and requires a key. All the doors that said it will not open will not open. So you spend a lot of your time reading nameplates on doors to try and figure it out, and when you finally do, you think, oh, this key can't possibly work on this door because it doesn't say that it's locked. But that is in fact what you do. It makes sense in context, but it doesn't make sense compared to the rules this game has established at this point. Speaking of the ship, there were several other backtracking sections where you just have to guess where to go. At one point, you need to get a sextant for the captain, so you can correct the course of the ship. Okay, no problem. Or at least it wouldn't be if he gave you any indication of where to go. So you run around checking all the previous rooms you had been in, wondering if you missed a sextant somewhere. But what you're actually looking for is a cutscene trigger on deck 2. and that makes some douche leave a room that he was in so that you can finally get into said room after passing the door like probably 5 or 6 times by this point. So you do all that, do some more backtracking, work out where to go next, and fight the boss only to be led astray again. You know you need the statue that you came here for, but then what? So you run around again looking for cutscene triggers, and you have to run all the way back to the captain just to have to backtrack again to get to the lifeboat. Also, the lifeboat is a cutscene, even though the captain gave you a lever which doesn't show up in your inventory. So here I'm thinking the game glitched or something and I'm missing a key item, but it's an invisible item that just sets a flag so when you stand in the right spot on the surface of the deck, you can progress. See how this can be kind of annoying? What's crazy is that in the final section of this game, it finally starts to come around. The puzzles get a little bit better, there's a decent amount of cool enemies, but it's too little too late. I was just on autopilot at this point, going through the motions. I feel like this game starts and ends strong, but there's a lot in the middle that is just annoying and brings down the pace. I wanted to like this game. I really did. It has some cool aspects to it. I enjoy how the combat handles, the weapons feel nice and punchy, and the moody atmosphere felt like it could successfully pull off a dark and scary game. However, this is an action game through and through. It has some semi-spooky stuff in it, but overall it's just rootin' tootin', I can't see where the hell I'm shooting. It's very linear in its progression, but the backtracking and a lack of a sense of direction is what kills the momentum. It feels like a 5-hour game stretched out to 10 hours, if that makes sense. Try it if you like that budget spooky game feel, but just know it can be an extremely tedious experience, so your mileage may vary.